The best part about stories, you remember them. They stay with you. And I want to tell you a bedtime story. Rest your tired bones.
Ryan Reynolds' short-lived television venture on Fubo, the maximum effort channel he launched in partnership with Fubo several years ago, abruptly came to an end in 2025, shortly after a series of lawsuits stirred the media. One of the channel's flagship programs, Bedtime Stories with Ryan Reynolds, originally released in 2023, ran for a total of 10 episodes. While the show wasn't specifically designed for children, it featured Reynolds reading new and classic bedtime stories as animated scenes magically unfolded around him. The series was co-created with George Dewey and intended as a warm, imaginative window into storytelling for parents to enjoy with their kids, or at least that was the concept. Reynolds has said he developed the series as a way to cope with anxiety and to share the stories he reads to his own children at night. Now, years after its initial release, Reynolds has licensed all 10 episodes to Nick Jr., with the series set to begin airing nightly starting March 2nd. The plan is to run the episodes Monday through Friday from March 2nd through 13th at 9:30 p.m., bringing the show to preschool audiences accustomed to Dora the Explorer, Blue's Clues, and other kid-centric programming. For many viewers, this move has raised eyebrows. Critics point out that Reynolds' deep voice, dark humor, and Deadpool-like antics, combined with the strangely animated sheep and moody lighting, make the series feel more eerie than kid-friendly. Yet, despite the unusual tone, the show has found a second life on Nick Jr., sparking questions about what drew the network to pick up a series that was never originally intended for preschoolers. While some see it as a playful, imaginative way to introduce children to storytelling, others can't shake the sense of creepiness that comes with Reynolds' Deadpool-adjacent persona applied to bedtime stories. Regardless, the series is officially set to air on Nick Jr., marking an unexpected revival for a show that had once seemed destined for obscurity after Fubo's sudden shutdown. Paramount, which owns Nickelodeon, recently announced that Bedtime Stories with Ryan Reynolds will air on Nick Jr. beginning March 2nd, essentially the same rollout reported by Deadline. With Josh Greenstein now at the helm of Paramount, it appears that Reynolds' first-look deal with the studio is being leveraged to license reruns of a series that originally aired on his failed Maximum Effort channel on Fubo, which was abruptly canceled due to poor ratings. Nick Jr. isn't exactly a ratings powerhouse either, particularly during nighttime hours, which typically draw fewer than 100,000 viewers. Morning and afternoon programming performs better, but this is far from the Nick at Night adult-oriented model. For parents, that means if your toddler can't fall asleep between 9 and 9:30 p.m. over the next 2 weeks, they'll be greeted by Reynolds' deep, somewhat eerie voice attempting to coax them into dreamland. Critics online haven't been shy about pointing out the bizarre incongruity of the show, a Deadpool-like persona reading children's stories alongside oddly animated sequences. Many see it as a classic example of a narcissist failing to recognize when a concept has lost its way. Financially, this deal isn't expected to be a windfall for Reynolds. It's just licensing an existing series that underperformed, a modest attempt at residual income. Social media reactions have been mixed at best. Followers who saw the Entertainment Tonight announcement flooded comment sections with jokes, skepticism, and memes. Some laughed at the idea of letting Reynolds read to their kids, others sarcastically questioned his choice of material, and a few even suggested tongue-in-cheek interventions like CPS checks. "No thanks, I'll read to my kids," one comment read. "Who thought this was a good idea? Probably going to read How to Become a Con Artist," joked another. The online reception shows that while Reynolds may have a plan to monetize past content, the public remains unconvinced, finding humor and a little horror in the idea of the Hollywood star moonlighting as a bedtime storyteller for preschoolers. Public reaction to the news that Bedtime Stories with Ryan Reynolds would air on Nick Jr. has been overwhelmingly negative. Comment sections are flooded with disbelief and outright rejection. "Literally nobody wants that. Nobody. No thanks," reads one post. Others call it traumatizing, sarcastically questioning whether Reynolds even stole the stories himself. The consensus seems clear. After years of viral antics, bullying executives, and questionable stunts, America's parents are not clamoring for the actor to read bedtime stories to their kids. Some commentators have even dredged up past controversies, including an incident on the set of Amityville where Reynolds reportedly improvised a slap across a child actor's face, leaving a script supervisor in tears. Critics argue that Reynolds' history only amplifies the unease surrounding his new role as a children's storyteller. Many expressed disbelief that Nickelodeon greenlit the series, pointing out that the network typically airs safe, kid-friendly content like Dora the Explorer and Blue's Clues. One parent quipped that they'd rather have Justin Bieber or anyone else read to their children than Reynolds. Despite the backlash, the series is moving forward through a licensing deal facilitated by Reynolds' friend Josh Greenstein at Paramount. Observers note that the move is less about creative vision and more about monetizing a series that originally performed poorly on the now-defunct Maximum Effort channel. The network is essentially airing reruns of a show no one asked for, likely as a residual income play. Meanwhile, Reynolds' other ventures suggest a pattern of seeking profit wherever possible. He and his friend Rob reportedly own the majority stake in the soccer club Wrexham AFC, which they bought years ago in financial disrepair. They have invested heavily in turning it into a Hollywood-branded team and reality story, but costs have mounted and their ambitions to reach the Premier League are faltering. Controversy surrounding grant money for stadium renovations in Wales further complicated matters, drawing local criticism that public funds were being used to support Hollywood interests. As financial pressures grew, Reynolds reportedly began selling off stakes to maintain cash flow. Taken together, these developments paint a picture of a celebrity leveraging every asset at his disposal, from failed TV series to sports ventures in pursuit of income, even if the public reaction is overwhelmingly negative. Social media commentary suggests that while Reynolds may see opportunity, parents and fans are signaling loud and clear that some ideas, like bedtime storytelling on Nick Jr., are simply not wanted. When news broke about the public grant funds from Wales, Ryan Reynolds and his business partner Rob sold a minority stake in Wrexham AFC to Apollo Sports Capital, a private equity firm. The deal valued the club at $350 million and included a dedicated investment for redeveloping Stoke K. Ross Stadium, including a new cop stand. Through this arrangement, the club received awfully $47.83 million in cash via a single new share issuance, filed with Companies House just before the January transfer deadline to support the championship campaign and stadium improvements. In addition to Apollo, the Allen family, the then a US-based equity group, purchased a 15% stake back in October 2024. Clearly, Ryan and Rob cannot fund the club's ambitions on their own, so they are bringing in multiple investors to share the financial load. Insiders suggest that Reynolds and Rob likely won't retain ownership long-term.
Instead, they appear to be selling successive minority stakes to private equity firms to maximize the club's valuation before eventually exiting. Allegedly, the goal is to rank up the club's value so they can cash out entirely, leaving ownership fragmented among multiple investors. Meanwhile, Reynolds' inability to fund Wrexham on his own also explains why he is licensing Bedtime Stories with Ryan Reynolds to Nick Jr., essentially monetizing a failed show to generate extra cash. His upcoming projects, including a film that sat on the shelf for 2 years and is now heading to Apple TV, suggest he's not performing as strongly financially as public perception might imply. One point of contention for Reynolds seems to be the repeated claim that he is not a billionaire, particularly after remarks from Steve Sarowitz. Reynolds reportedly bristled at this, framing it as an attack from someone wealthy attempting to undermine him and his wife. In reality, being a billionaire would likely allow him to fully fund Wrexham without seeking outside investors or selling TV rights for reruns. Additional sources familiar with Reynolds' business dealings indicate that he once considered spending $10 million to settle a lawsuit to protect reputations, but underestimated the resistance from Sarowitz, who reportedly had the resources to fight back. Legal fees are also a major factor. Attorneys like Mannett, Phelps, and Phillips charge $1,200 to $2,500 per hour, further straining Reynolds' resources. Taken together, these financial maneuvers portray Reynolds as a celebrity constantly balancing ambition with cash flow limitations, trying to monetize existing projects and leverage investor partnerships to support high-profile ventures that his own pocketbook alone cannot sustain. The legal and PR costs in this ongoing saga are staggering. Estimates suggest that Blake's legal team alone, including firms like Wilkie Gallagher, where hourly rates run $1,500 to $2,500, has already racked up enormous bills. On top of that, she has a former CIA deputy chief, Nick Shapiro, handling crisis PR. Between multiple law firms, dozens of lawyers, and high-level crisis management, the expenses have ballooned. Experts estimate that over a year into the lawsuit, the total spent could be close to $20 million, and the results so far are minimal. In fact, indications are that they may ultimately lose the case. Meanwhile, the financial strain extends beyond legal fees. Ryan Reynolds has not released any new films during this period, and Blake has not been professionally active. Reynolds has had to pull money to maintain and improve Wrexham AFC, and he is now licensing reruns of a previously unsuccessful show, Bedtime Stories with Ryan Reynolds, to Nick Jr., a network whose audience may not even be receptive. Public reception has been underwhelming, with boycotts and negative feedback appearing online. Other business ventures are under pressure as well. Aviation Gin has reportedly seen declining sales, with 2024 volumes down, while Mint Mobile continues to face lawsuits over privacy violations and hacking concerns. Reynolds remains tied to the brand as its face, but his marketability is reportedly diminishing. These factors underscore the irony that the lawsuit itself, fueled by a perceived personal or reputational injury, is draining resources that could be used elsewhere. Even with agreements in place to protect his personal and professional reputation, Reynolds' visibility and brand value are declining. Observers are questioning whether the strain of this litigation and the associated spending might jeopardize any of the companies he's involved in. Over months of filings, including motions for sanctions, attorney fees, anti-SLAPP defenses, and efforts to remove opposing counsel, the legal battle has been relentless. Yet despite the enormous sums spent and strategic maneuvers, the case remains unresolved, leaving both parties bleeding money while public interest and sympathy appear limited. Since the unsealing of key evidence, there has been an unexpected silence from Ryan Reynolds and Blake's legal teams. After months of relentless filings, motions for sanctions, anti-SLAPP defenses, and repeated attempts to remove opposing counsel, there have been no new documents or filings. It's as if they have realized they may have lost the plot. Notably, Reynolds didn't even attend a recent hearing with Blake, reportedly because he is considered a liability. The court now has public records of what he allegedly said to executives at various companies, further complicating their case. Previously, silence was rare. The teams would file numerous motions, often unnecessary, to attempt to influence the outcome. The sudden slowdown suggests they may have recognized that all the money spent, estimated in the tens of millions, could be wasted. Insiders speculate that when the judge rules, a large portion of the case may be dismissed. If that happens, questions remain. What will be left of the claims, and what long-term consequences might Blake and Reynolds face? If the case is deemed frivolous, with no legitimate evidence of reputational harm, given that Reynolds' own texts and actions arguably caused more damage than anyone else, he could face fallout beyond the courtroom. Potential repercussions include lawsuits from business partners, damage to his relationships with talent agencies, or other professional consequences. Right now, it appears Reynolds and his wife are scrambling financially, relying on residual income streams, licensing old projects, and seeking other sources of cash to stay afloat while the legal storm drags on.